إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والصلاة والسلام على آله وعلى صحبه والأجمعين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. صدق الله العظيم. Indeed, the praises for Allah, we praise Him. We seek His assistance, we seek refuge, we seek forgiveness, and we seek protection with Allah from the evil which manifests from within ourselves and the harm thereof. I give open testimony that there is no deity worthy of worship but Allah. Highly glorified is He. He has no partner in His dominion of His creation, and I give open testimony that Muhammad, to whom the Quran was revealed, is His servant and messenger. Peace and prayers be upon him, his family, his companions, and all those who are gathered in righteousness. Ameen. O you who believe, have taqwa for Allah as it is proper to have taqwa for Him, and die not except in a state of Islam. Die not except as believers, willfully submitting your wills. Surely Allah speaks the truth. Assalamu alaikum. Beloved Muslims, Allah has given us another Jumu'ah, another day of gathering, another day where we come in obedience, leaving off those things that command our attention, leaving off those things that we place great importance in, and sometimes things that are not too important. Sometimes we are leaving off those things that are frivolous, that are matters of entertainment. But on this day, we get to respond to Allah's call, and we get to do so hoping that He finds our presence and our intention pleasing. Allah tells us in the first ayat of Surah An-Nisa, Ya ayyuhan nasu ittaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida wa khalaqa minha zawjaha wa batha minhuma rijalan kathiran wa nisaa wa taqullaha alladhi tasaaluna bihi wal arham inna Allaha kana alaykum raqiba. Sadaqallahu al-Amin. O mankind, O humanity. The beginning, this is important, because what we're talking about today, we're talking not just about Muslims. We're talking about humanity. We're talking about a plight that we are enduring, that we are facing as a human family. It says, O mankind, O humanity, have taqwa for your guardian Lord, for your Rabb. We've talked about this word Rabb before, and we will continue to talk about it, the significance in that it being a word which signifies education. It signifies growth. The Rabb, our Lord, the one who has created us, the one who has breathed into us our direction, our purpose, the ruh, the spirit that animates us, that moves us, the one who is able to foresee our complete potential, the one who takes us from one step to another. He takes us gradually along the pattern or the pathway that He has ordained for us. So have taqwa for your guardian Lord who has created you from a single soul. A single soul, this idea of singularity is extremely important for us now, as we are in a space where there's so much focus on identity. There's so much focus on the individual hurts and slights, where we don't see that these things are slights, they are hurts to us all. So Allah says, O mankind, have taqwa for your guardian Lord who's created you out of a single soul. And from that created its mate. And from these two created countless men and women. They scattered like seeds. You think about a farmer when it's time to till, or just think about the idea of pollination. And this idea of an innumerable progeny that manifests from a single soul and its mate. Right? He's created his mate and created countless men and women and scattered them like seeds. It says to have taqwa for Allah, whom you demand your mutual rights between one another. Have taqwa for your guardian Lord. It says, and also the wombs that bore you. right? Also the wombs that bore you. And it's easy for us, it's simple for us, it's logical for us to simply look directly at, our mothers. Absolutely, certainly, right? We have a hadith that support this understanding, right? Who do I honor first? And when the question was given to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, 3 times he answers with your mother. Honor your mother first, 3 times. Your mother, your mother, your mother, and then your father, right? But it's also a guidance for us to also think about the wombs, the social wombs, the intellectual wombs, the cultural wombs that produce us. So today's khutbah is in reference, inshallah, to this idea, this singularity, this common purpose or common origin, and also in understanding the wombs that have produced us, right? The wombs that have produced us. And sometimes those wombs can produce what Allah, they can produce what Allah has ordained to be good. They can be in alignment with the creation that Allah has brought into being. And there will also be times where the influence of shaitan causes for that creation to veer off and to take on characteristics that are not in alignment with what Allah has created. And that is where we're at right now. So this khutbah is really, it's addressing this reality, and it's addressing it from a sense of just understanding how there's a womb of desensitization that has taken place. There's a womb of desensitization. And how have we got to this point where we have become desensitized, where we have to be shocked into action? We have to be shocked into speech. How have we gotten into that point? Allah addresses this, and this is not, it sounds like it's not dealing with social issues, but dietary ones. What we also understand is that we are to look for the deeper meaning. We are to look for the consistencies and the connections, because the physical diet, the laws and the rules behind the physical diet should also make us think about our spiritual diets and our intellectual diets. Right? There's a womb within each of these things, and each of them produces something. They produce a particular life and a thinking that is going to be either in accordance with the spirit that Allah has breathed into our father Adam alayhi salam, or it's going to be representative of the khutuwat, of the footsteps of shaitan. So Allah tells us, says, Ya ayyuhan nasu kulu mimma fil ardi halalan tayyiban wa la tattabi'u khutuwati shaitan. O mankind, O humanity, eat of what is good in the earth, what is halal and tayyib, what is pure, what is good, what supports the natural life that Allah has created you with, that supports the potential that He has created in each and every one of us. Eat of those things, right? Eat of those things. And He says, وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ شَيْطَانٍ, and do not follow the footsteps of shaitan. This khutuwat, this idea of the footsteps, but it's not just footsteps. Understanding that shaitan's footsteps will always be embedded in trespass. They will always be, they will always lead away from Allah. They will always lead us to that which is immoral, that which is shameful, that which goes against this idea of the singularity or the common origin that Allah has created us with. Shaitan's footsteps will always bring about division. It will always bring about debasement. It says, subhanallah, innahu lakum aduwwun mubin. Indeed, he is for you an aduwwun mubin, an open enemy, a clear enemy. Right? There's no doubt about this. And if you follow in his footsteps, then he will take you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you follow in his footsteps, he will take you to disgrace. He will take you away from the mission for which our father Adam has been created, and by extension, his righteous progeny. It says, إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالسُّوءِ وَالْفَحْشَاءِ. He commands what is, he commands you to what is evil and what is shameful, what is immoral, what is debasing, right? What is not pleasing, obviously, to Allah, which takes us not to the reward, but to the punishment. It says, وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْمَلُونَ. And that you would speak of Allah that which you have no knowledge. So we want to briefly just get into this idea right now. When we think about eating and how can we transfer this ayat, this guidance that Allah gives us to eat of that which is halal and tayyib. How can we transfer this guidance into our intellectual and our spiritual and our political and our economic in every realm of life that we have? How do we translate or transfer this guidance that Allah has given us? We translate it by understanding, number one, we are in a society that has desensitized the physical taste. If you're eating in this society, if you're going out and eating at in fast food restaurants, right? If you're eating in fast food restaurants, if you're eating packaged foods, processed foods, your sense of taste is so far off. It is so far off from what it has been designed in the way it has been designed to function, right? We have more sugar and more salt added to our foods than probably anywhere in the world. And this is something that you don't really see until you eat, well, not necessarily if you just leave America, the United States, but once if you stop eating fast food for a month and you just eating home cooked food, if you go back out after that month and you taste what you've given up for a month, you will be making faces. You will be aghast. You will be shocked at the difference, at the sensitivity that you have gained by leaving off what is mass produced, by leaving off the diet. And I don't want to get too. We're not saying this is shaitan, but well, to a degree it is, right? To a degree it is. Shaitan, the influence, it is to take us away from our natural sensitivities. It's to take us away from our natural sensitivities so that we cannot respond clearly to what should be plain to us. Right, when Allah says that, do not follow the footsteps of Shaitan, says that he is adu mubin, he is a clear and open enemy, and he also tells us that the Quran he used the same word mubin to tell us the guidance that we have in this book. This word mubin, what is clear, what is apparent, what is evident. So we're at a point now where when it comes to justice, we don't have the wherewithal, the sensitivity to respond collectively. I'm not saying for oppressed people, for individuals who are the victims of oppression, but collectively, we don't have the sensitivity required to respond to acts of injustice in all of their different forms, because we have been desensitized. And how have we been desensitized? We've been desensitized because we have a diet of excess. We have a diet of too much violence, too much sex, too much lying, too much gossip, too much hatred. We have a diet of excess. And because we have a diet of excess, it has rendered us incapable of responding as a collective, as a human family, to those acts that should, when you put it in your mouth, you should taste it. That don't taste right. Something's wrong with that. That's nasty. That's too much. And the same goes for the numbers. I think it was early last weekend, the newspaper, the headlines were 100 or 104 shot over the weekend in Chicago. right? But we see numbers like that all the time. We see 70 shot, 80, 90. But what we don't see, and what we don't have the sensitivity to respond to that with is, tell us whose footsteps they are following in. Tell us how we have come to the point where we have this type of violence in these communities repeatedly. Tell us how this is directly connected to centuries of oppression, to centuries of brutality. Tell us how this is connected to disinvestment and over-policing. Tell us how this is connected to the atrocities, how this is connected to people who have taken on a diet that is in accordance with the footsteps, following the footsteps of Shaitan. Tell us what we need to know so that we can respond to this in a way that Allah would have us do so. I remind us, when the angels were told about the creation of Adam alayhi salam, they said, will you create one who is going to create bloodshed and mischief in the land? Allah tells them, look, I know what you don't know. I'm telling you that because this is to remind us that condition existed prior to the creation of Adam alayhi salam. Are you going to create another one that's going to do the same thing, that's going to follow up behind Shaitan? Allah says, no. I know what you know not. And that ruh that I spoke about, the ruh, that spirit, that purpose, the thing that animates us, that is what Allah breathed into Adam alayhi salam, our father Adam alayhi salam. That single soul that we are all the inheritors of, all the progeny of. And that is also the same spirit that animates the righteous. That is the same spirit that animates each and every one of us. But if that spirit is not fed properly, if the diet is not in accordance with what Allah has said that diet needs to be, in order for us to not follow footsteps, follow a pattern that takes us away from the potential that Allah has created us with, then we end up desensitized. We end up doing the will of Shaitan. So our diet, everything starts with the diet. What is halal? Tawheed. What is halal and tawheed? What Allah has ordered to be permissible and lawful. What is good, what is natural. But here's the thing. Diets are built, the diets that we engage in, we get used to them. We get used to them and we start to crave the things that we eat. And if we're eating bad, we start craving bad. So there's a shift that has to take place. And there's a recognition that we have to realize within each and every one of us. We have to be willing to look at what are we consuming? What are we consuming and what are we craving? Because that's going to determine how we act. That's going to determine how we respond. That's going to determine if we are able to be the representation of Adam alayhi salam that the angel saw the second time when they looked out into the creation. And they said, how could anybody go wrong in a place like this? When they saw Adam living up to its full potential as a community, not as an individual, but as a community, standing firmly for justice, adhering to each of the principles that Allah gives us as Muslims. Each of the principles, each one of the pillars of Islam, these are all social, these are all socially reforming and enlivening principles that Allah has given us, that allows us to find the halal and the good, or to bring about the good in every aspect of our social interactions. So we're praying that Allah gives us greater insight and greater awareness of what we consume. Because we are in a position now where humanity as a whole is in need It's a need of one. It's a need of a community, a spark that will sensitize it. Because to be quite honest, beloved Muslims, how different is the struggle that we see today from the struggle from 75 years ago, or 100 years ago, or even 200 or 300 years? In its essence, it is very much the same. It is still a struggle for human dignity. It is still a struggle against following the footsteps of Shaitan that would tell us that we are actually not one human family, that will tell us that some are more worthy than others. So that is what we're fighting against. So may Allah make it easy for us to be mindful of what we take in physically, mentally, spiritually, and allow us to be sensitized to those things that will animate us in the ways in which that Allah has already ordained for us. May we respond to the spirit, to the ruh that Allah has placed within our Father Adam alayhi salam, and bring about the vision of peace, the vision of prosperity, the vision of a community that was principled and standing for justice. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار.
آمين.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah. The praises for Allah, the praises for Allah, and then the praises for Allah. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said there are two things which we lose, two blessings which we lose, or can lose, and that one is our health, and the second is the time to do good. The time to do good, right? The time that we have to actually respond to the things that we see. This is important for us to think about how we're using the gifts that Allah has given us. How are we using the time that Allah has given us? And for a lot of us, this has been a moment where we have been able to sit down and pause for a moment, and it's been oddly enough, a recuperative and a rejuvenating experience for many. I've been doing gardening and going outside and yard work and just feeling alive. And then I found out that there are mental health professionals saying that that's exactly what you should be doing right now. You should be getting out, right? We've been chained quite often. We're in offices or sitting in front of laptops, and we are forgetting that there is a world out here that is still testifying to the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's nothing more affirming of Allah's control, of his power, than going out and seeing the creation doing exactly what it's supposed to do. You plant a seed in the ground, you care for it, you water it, you weed, and you watch as that bud comes through the ground, as it breaks through the soil. You watch as you begin to harvest, and you bring in the fruits of the literal fruits of your labor, and you're able to consume those, bring those in, eat. You got enough, you can share. Right? You begin to see that so much of what troubles us, so much of what takes our attention, they're distractions. They're distractions. And though we have to fight through those distractions, it's important that we remember that Allah's promise is true. It's important that we remember that Allah has a law, a universal law in the creation, which testifies to his greatness, which testifies to his majesty. And there's a system that we can participate in. But once again, as I said in the beginning, it is not just about thinking about the physical food. When we see our ability to participate and to direct that flow of creation that Allah has created, that we can till, that we can plant, that we can sow, right? When we see that, then we also have to remember that we also have the same capacity in the systems that govern our social interaction. We have the same capacity to work to till, to sow, to get the bad weeds, to get the weeds out, get the bad actors out. We have the same capacity to watch as we are able to collectively watch come out of the ground, right? Out of the people, out of the collective spirit of the people. We have the ability to watch progress, to watch, to see trees grow, systems grow, where we can all benefit from the fruit, from the shade, from the stability that those systems give. You didn't notice about trees? Matter of fact, I think I remember Imam Tariq talking about this in the khutbah a long time ago. He talked about how the trees and their roots, how they are a vital part of bringing giving a solid foundation to the earth itself. The way that the roots intertwine with the soil. And every tree is an ecosystem. Just as every branch of government, every system, every structure within society is its own ecosystem. And Allah calls us to be system thinkers. For the 5 pillars, each of them, there's a system. There's a system embedded in each and every one of those. And our challenge is going to be, how do we incorporate that awareness? How do we incorporate the fundamentals of those systems into the systems that govern us collectively? That is our very real challenge. So Allah has given us the opportunity. He has given us the book, and He's given us prophetic models. He has given us righteous predecessors who have come to us before. And He has given us the talents of one another. And He has also given us this beautiful concept of Shura Bainahum. He has given us this wonderful concept because our success is not dependent upon the ability of one individual. Our success is going to be dependent upon those who are willing to come together and tackle these problems head on, investing for the long haul. There's a saying that the answers are in the room. Right? Not with one individual, but the answers are in the room. Let's all be in the room. Let's all commit to being in the room. Let's all commit to engaging in this process of shura, this process of mutual consultation. Let's collectively carry this weight and invite others so the weight becomes lighter. So I end by reminding us that the challenges that we face today, though they may have kind of woke some folks up, right? We keep going through all the names, the physical violence and oppression that we witness. You know, Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmed Arbery, and so many names, too many names to name. These are all connected to all the other systems that govern us. All the other systems. And if we want to bring an end to the struggle that we continue to find ourselves in from 100 years ago, from 200 years ago, then it's going to take a reformation of the systems. And that's our job. That's our job. So may Allah bless us to be of those who are able to act with the spirit that He has placed within us. May Allah bless us to remember that He has created us ahsani fi taqween, in a most excellent mode. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب.
El-Amin.